one of the devastating consequences of receiving the diagnosis of dementia is often friends and family fall away. And I think that they fall away because they are afraid that they don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And if you are one of those people that has someone who, if you're listening to this and you have someone in your life who has dementia, and you recognize that you don't know, you're resistant of visiting or spending time with because you don't know what to do, I would encourage you to just go and respond to and connect. And when you're communicating with someone with dementia, there's a golden rule, and that's that you can always find truth in what they're saying when you speak to and listen to the emotion, and you connect with them based on the emotion of what they are talking about.
I am Celia Sanker, Executive Director of the DiversityCanada Foundation, and this is the GoldenYears Fireside Chat. GoldenYears Fireside Chat is brought to you on the goldenvoices.com website. It's the platform for seniors, where seniors get together to focus on issues of concern to golden individuals, 55 years and up. Today's topic is dementia and the stigma associated with dementia, and what society can do to become more welcoming of those who are dealing with the challenges brought by dementia. We have as our guest today Dr. Sienna Caspar, who is an associate professor at the University of Lethbridge in the Bachelor of Therapeutic Recreation program. Sienna received a BSc in Therapeutic Recreation from the University of Southern Alabama. I almost said Southern Alberta, but she's a cross-border professional. She has worked in long-term care facilities in both Canada and the United States for over 2 decades, both as a consultant and as a certified therapeutic recreation specialist. She was a national trainer for the American Therapeutic Recreation Association's Dementia Practice Guideline for the non-pharmacological treatment of behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia. She received an MA in gerontology from SFU, Simon Fraser University, then proceeded to UBC, the University of British Columbia, where she completed her PhD, focusing on the relationship between care staff empowerment and the ability to provide person-centered care in long-term care settings. She is the perfect person to delve into this topic. Additionally, there was a recent article that was in the academic online platform, The Conversation, which was picked up by many newspapers across Canada, which spoke about dementia and the stigma, confronting the stigma associated with dementia. That was a very long introduction, but welcome and thank you very much for being with us on the GoldenYears Fireside Chat.
Thank you very much. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here.
Maybe we will start off by giving a definition of dementia. What exactly are we referring to when we say we're talking about dementia?
One of the biggest misnomers or misunderstandings about dementia is a lot of people believe that it is a disease in and of itself, and it's actually not. There are over 70 different diseases that can cause dementia or some form of it. Alzheimer's disease accounts for approximately 50% of all of the dementias out there, and that's how come so often people think that they are one and the same, but there are many different diseases that can cause a form of dementia. And dementia is the cognitive decline. It is, in fact, the brain starting to deteriorate. It's cell death that is actually occurring. We know that in advanced stages of Alzheimer's disease, the brain actually shrinks to half its normal size or weight because of the cell death. And the biggest outcomes of that is an impact on people's not just memory, but also functioning in their activities of daily living as a result of all of that cell death. So hopefully that's a generalized layman's term understanding of what dementia is.
That really brings home the point that dementia is a disease, and as you mentioned there, that there's a physical change in the brain, and as a result, the individual cannot function as he or she did throughout life.
It's progressive in that, and the different types of dementia progress in different ways. And so one of the things that I think has been really important in the last decade is our ability to have a differential diagnosis, because then we're able to anticipate better what the progression of that individual's life is going to be as they live with the disease that is causing the dementia. So even the different areas of the brain get impacted differently depending upon whether or not it is what's called frontal temporal dementia or Lewy body dementia or Alzheimer's disease. But the biggest thing is to understand, well, I guess two things. One is that there is cell death that is impacting brains in ways where we have to meet the person who has dementia where they are. We need to step into where they are and help support what is still their highest capacity for functioning, as opposed to what we used to do. And I'm actually kind of, when I graduated way back with my undergraduate degree, we were trained to use reality orientation for people with dementia in long-term care. Where we're asking that individual to step into our world, our reality, trying to retrain brain cells that aren't actually functioning anymore, aren't there, to try to have them be more normal like us, instead of really honoring and supporting the strengths that still are there, the person that is still there, absolutely, and valuing what they still are able to do, as opposed to judging them by our standards of what we want or expect them to be able to do.
Wonderful. That's sets the framework for what we will be discussing today. So dementia affects who exactly?
Anyone and everyone. It does not differentiate. Certainly, I think the numbers are growing. They're only going to continue to grow. We have an aging population, and age is the number one risk factor for developing dementia. People who are fortunate enough to reach the age of 85 have a significantly increased risk of developing dementia. We also know, and we're still not completely sure why, but we know that your gender also influences your risk. Women are more likely to develop dementia than men are. We're not completely we don't completely understand why. We used to think that was just because more women lived longer. We live longer, and that was just an association of that, but it's not. There is actually something about being a female that makes the brain more susceptible. So maybe there's something about the hormones, maybe there's something about the fact that we go through menopause. We don't know. There's some fascinating research that's happening out there right now that's exploring that and trying to understand that more. My assumption is that your next question is, how can we stave it off? Well, because as soon as you say it's like anyone and everyone, it's kind of like, okay, there is no pill. We've been looking for a magic pill, one drug treatment for, I can remember, as a dementia care specialist 15 years ago saying in 5 years we're going to have it, and saying that every year, in 5 years we're going to have it, in 5 years. And we finally, I think, come to an understanding that it is so complex. There are so many different things that all come together and converge and then can result in dementia occurring. That we have to look at sleep. Sleep is huge. We have to look at diet. Diet is huge. We have to look at exercise and that. We have to look at education. We have to look at your social connections. It's in fact the whole person. And it's all of those things put together, and also genetics. There are some genetic components. And environmental things as well. We're looking at it's too complex. I don't think that there's going to be a one thing that we're ever going to find that if we can fix just that or address just that or have a medication that addresses just that we'll find the solution. That in fact it's going to have to be much more multifaceted because it is much more complex. It's our brains. Well, we're still learning and understanding how our brains work.
Is it an inevitability? Is it that as we grow older, it's going to happen? It's going to catch up with all of us?
No, it's not that. I think that there are a lot of things that we can do to help us decrease the potential that we're going to get it. And it's not a fait accompli. It's not a guarantee. My understanding, the last I looked, and I hope this is still accurate, if you reach by the age of 85, I think you have one of the places that I read, and again, I'm always wary to quote statistics because, wait a few days or weeks or months or years and it can change, or depending upon the study, but you have like 50% chance, but 50% of over the age of 85, that's still, you still have a really good shot at not getting it. And one of the good things I think is that everything that we know that helps decrease the possibility of getting dementia also helps increase the possibility of having a good quality of life. So getting better sleep, eating in such a way that you're keeping your body healthy. All of these things also help you age well. They help you live well. Having social connections, keeping your brain agile, learning something new. Definitely learning something new helps to create this what's called cognitive reserve. And that also helps keep us engaged and excited about, life and living life. So if you are outstanding at Sudoku, keeping on doing Sudoku is actually that's using the same neuronic pathways, but try something new. Take up drumming, take up a new dancing, if you can learn a new language, that's a lot of cognitive reserve. I'm embarrassed to say I was raised in the United States, although I was born in Canada, and have lived in Canada most of my adult life. I'm not bilingual. I wish I had been. I certainly made sure both of my children went to French immersion school, trying to make up for that. My own unilingualism. But if I had the time, which I don't right now, but I hope to in the future, actually, to start learning another language. That's one of the best things you can do to build cognitive reserve. I'm a drummer. That also, that hand over hand, learning new patterns, learning music, picking up a musical instrument, all of those things can help you develop and build cognitive reserve, and also maintaining and increasing your social connections. Socializing, getting out. It's as a recreation therapist this last year during the pandemic, it was heartbreaking to me. Because recreation therapy and recreation therapists view health as significantly more than the absence of illness. We look at an individual and we say, in order for that person to be deemed healthy or well, all aspects of their life need to be well. They need to have all of those aspects, those needs being met. And that includes their social, their emotional, their cultural, their physical, their spiritual. And so when I was watching what was happening as we cared for the this huge focus on the physical health of people, and I understood why. But when I was watching what was occurring in long-term care and how everyone was by default becoming socially isolated, I was so concerned for them. I was so concerned for, the cost at which we were forced, and I understand why, again, forced to ensure that we were saving people. But I don't think we could call people truly healthy or well during that time, when so many of their other needs, there's no way that they were able to be, or not no way. I think that meeting those other needs were incredibly challenging, if not impossible.
Yes, we hear it a lot. DiversityCanada works with seniors, and it's been tough not being able to have those connections. We hear it from the seniors, not being able to have the activities, things that they were familiar, places that they were familiar with, not being able to go there, not being able to see the faces in person. It was incredibly tough.
That's a huge part of people's quality of life, their health and their wellness, is also those social needs, those emotional needs, those spiritual needs, not being able to meet together to attend church, or having choir singing, or all of those things that the recreation therapist, that's our role in long-term care, is to ensure that those needs are all still being hopefully met to the best of our ability.
Going back to the article that was carried in your article in the conversation, the focus of it was stigma associated with dementia and how we can deal with that and look to reduce that. Tell me a bit more about this idea of the stigma that's attached to dementia.
Well, I think the stigma that comes with dementia is actually secondary to or tacked on to the fact that we live in an ageist society. We live in an ageist society. I make that claim, and anyone who wants to challenge me on that, I just say, go to any card store and I challenge you to find a birthday card after the age of 21 that is actually positive about aging, that actually celebrates aging, until you get up into like the real golden years, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you're still alive or something, like we really have an ageist society. And it's such a bizarre thing. And when they look at the language that people use when they are talking about growing older or aging, it is as derogatory as language that people use who are racist, that language that people use who are sexist. And yet what's fascinating is that unless something untoward happens, all of us are going to become old. And yet we have this, extreme ageist value system even. I was invited to attend a conference, international conference in, it was in South Korea, and there must have been a translation error because there was all of this advertisement on anti-aging products. And it was for the International Association of Geriatrics and Gerontology. And I was thinking, oh no. But it is that, as soon as people, like the anti-aging beauty product, it's $1 billion, like multi-billion-dollar industry. And it feeds into that ageist value system and the fear around aging, and so I think you take that and you combine that with something that we are really, really afraid of, which is losing our cognitive faculties, which is how we define ourselves by and large, and you have even more stigma. It's like a double whammy stigma, and in both cases it's about fear. It's the manifestation of fear of losing, I think, our ego attachment to who we are, and also about how what is perpetuated by the media, by, we are just now finally honoring actresses and putting them on the big screen who are aging, who haven't, gone the I think it's so sad, because we see such beautiful nuances. We interpret so much in our facial features, and when women feel like they have to, do this to make sure they don't have, you just don't see as much subtlety. It's not as attractive. But when they look in the mirror, they're not talking to themselves in the mirror, maybe, I don't know. But we finally have, and not all, there's a lot of, actresses out there who still understandably give in to the pressures to fight with every ounce of their being and all of their money, the look and appearance of aging. But there are finally some who are embracing that, and I think we need more role models of that. But we also need more contact, and that was what that article was about, as far as helping to, I would say, address our fears and our stereotypical beliefs about aging, and also about people with dementia. And this whole idea started when I was a recreation therapist working at Trail Regional Hospital, actually. I had a program called an Adopt a Grandparent program, and it was where we paired, I worked in a long-term care, it was an extended care facility. So this is where, back in the day, extended care meant that it was home to people who were the lowest functioning, lowest physically functioning, lowest cognitively functioning. Older adults were in the extended care. And we partnered them with youth from a grade 4 classroom. And I went to ensure that, I had education sessions with the students, and I found a teacher who was on board. And with the students, I talked to them about death and dying, because they would be paired with this senior, this older adult. And oftentimes we would have someone die, who they were paired with. So we had to talk about death and dying. We talked about dementia. So they were all prepared. None of the students were afraid, but their parents were. Their parents were like, whoa, I'm not sure about this. And so we learned that we had to actually educate the parents too. And then what we found is that the students, just as soon as they got there, they just bonded with the residents who they were paired up with, and beautiful relationships were formed. And I saw this growth. Where I didn't see the growth was with the parents, and that was when I started thinking, like, that's because the parents aren't the ones coming into the unit. They're not the ones that are coming into the extended care facility. They're not the ones developing the relationships with this. And then later, after I got out of position and started studying this, I did a study, an intergenerational study, and I was looking at another program that's much larger scale, that's run in Calgary, actually, and it's called Linkages, and they link many different middle school and high school students with many different residents in many different long-term care homes, and it's a service group. And I actually studied this program, and we measured the students' perceptions of the older adults before and then following the 7-month partnering. And what we were looking at was their stigma, and it was huge how much we changed that, how many statistically significant, for research terms there, that we were able to actually move their perceptions of older adults just by going in once a week and doing activities with them, and in partnering with the individuals who lived in the long-term care homes. What was fascinating was how honest the students were in their preconceived ideas prior to starting the project. They viewed them as like have some of the results here. Where some of the changes that they that we were able to find is we saw their perceptions change from viewing the older adults as from uncooperative at first to cooperative, from inconsiderate to considerate, from inflexible to flexible. Like these were and the fact that they believed that of the older adults before they went in is another indicator of the ageist perceptions that we have. But they were able to move that just not by, there was some education, but it was, I think, more the contact, spending time with them, and developing relationships with them.
Those programs, the one in Toronto and the one that you just described, they are perhaps the exception to the rule. Lay the landscape for us. What is the current approach to dealing with individuals who have dementia, and how does that contribute to perpetuating the stigma around dementia?
So understandably, our first focus is on safety. And one of my favorite quotes ever comes from the book. I believe it's called, all of a sudden I'm spacing on it, but I believe it's called Being Human. And it is that we want autonomy for ourselves and safety for the ones we love. And so in order to, so much of the focus in caring for and meeting the needs of, and I'm putting those in quotes purposefully, people with dementia is on safety, on security, on making sure that they cannot be at risk to themselves or to others. And what this does is it actually robs them of what I refer to as the dignity of risk. There is dignity in risk. There is dignity in autonomy. And I understand why. And yet, I also believe that we can inadvertently, because of such an overemphasis on safety, literally escalate the risk of the individual not thriving, not being healthy, not being well. So as a recreation therapist, I remember working in one facility where, out of fear of, risk, we weren't allowed to put up anything on the walls in the locked, secure unit of that was home to individuals with dementia. They weren't allowed to be out in the garden area. Or and in one case it was, and the reason, the justification was, well, they might eat the dirt, and it's like, what? And now we've even I gather during COVID, recreation therapists weren't even allowed to decorate for Christmas. They weren't allowed to put up Christmas trees with Christmas decorations because people might touch them, and we can't, all of this fear around protecting and that safety and security takes away so much else, the humanness and disregards autonomy and the dignity of risk for people with dementia. And also what we do is we segregate them, because then, and this is a double, there is some, it's not simple, because when you do segregate them, you can on the one hand better meet their needs because you're able to adapt. You can create an environment that is safe for them to move around freely, that hopefully is really interactive and gives them opportunities to independently engage with their environment. If you do that, and it is really about them and their needs and ensuring that it's focused on that, then that does make sense. But if you segregate them and make it a sterile, safe environment, that's about meeting your needs. That's about taking care of you more than them. It's under the smoke and mirror of it being about them, but I would always challenge that. And also, one of the unintended consequences of that is when they become segregated, is there's less and less opportunity for contact with other people who don't have dementia, contact with programs that aren't, that can be more inclusive, those types of things. And it reinforces, I think that does inadvertently reinforce the stigma of dementia. And I think that also the whole idea of a dementia-friendly community really we have to start challenging that segregation right at the beginning, where more people have opportunities to be in contact with, to learn about, and to connect with, and hopefully develop relationships with people with dementia, to punch through our own fears, our own misperceptions. One of the devastating consequences of receiving the diagnosis of dementia is often friends and family fall away. And I think that they fall away because they are afraid that they don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And if you are one of those people that has someone who, if you're listening to this and you have someone in your life who has dementia, and you recognize that you don't know, you're resistant of visiting or spending time with because you don't know what to do, I would encourage you to just go and respond to and connect. And when you're communicating with someone with dementia, there's a golden rule, and that's that you can always find truth in what they're saying when you speak to and listen to the emotion, and you connect with them based on the emotion of what they are talking about. Also, the only other tip that I would give in communicating, well, there's a few tips, but with someone with dementia is meet them where they are. Don't try to bring them into your world by quizzing them, because they can fail quizzes. So you want to ask them failure-free conversations. And failure-free conversations are like, you wouldn't say, "What color is this?" because that has a right or wrong answer. You would say, "Do you like this color?" There's no right or wrong answer there. "What does this color remind you of?" There's no right or wrong answer there. So we teach our students failure-free activities and failure-free conversations with the individual with dementia. And I think if we can get at that and teach other people, then they may be less wary of staying connected with the individuals who have dementia or on the dementia journey.
Thank you for those tips. That's really, really indeed helpful. That can encourage communication, connection by, someone who is afraid, understanding that it's a different type of communication. It's not because the brain is functioning differently for the individual who has dementia. Now, you spoke about the dementia journey. I want to take a look at that. There are many different stages of dementia. You said earlier that it's a progressive disease. I've heard it said that a lot of the stigma that comes with dementia is in part because of the way that the media portrays dementia, in that when there's a news story, it's mostly focused on individuals who are in the late stages of dementia, where there are behaviors that would contribute to the stigmatizing of those with dementia. Can you give us a bit more insight on that?
Honestly, I haven't seen a lot of that. I've seen people just simply only talking about the numbers, talking about using terms such as really derogatory terms around, like battling with the devastating, and it can be devastating, but those kind of devastating as opposed to other types of language. I've heard that out there. I think what's unfortunate is some of the wonderful stories of people successfully, and define successfully, we can challenge that, but people still being important and contributory and valued members of their community while living with dementia. And some of the wonderful stuff, the intergenerational choirs that are being formed, choirs that are formed that are half the members have dementia and half are either families or friends, and they're coming together and singing together and challenging the stigma in that way. I mean, that's a beautiful example of contact theory, because they're coming together as equals, co-creating something. There's opportunities for friendships to being formed. I wish that those were more in the news, but that's certainly not as juicy as an individual who gets lost and is in extreme risk because they were lost, and the fear. We tend to be drawn, and I think news focuses on that which that we are afraid of. That's more newsworthy than that which celebrates our strengths, celebrates our successes, and I think that may be at play here. It was painful and devastating, and I was kind of heart-wrenchingly watching as we saw all the stories of the kind of some of the horrific outcomes that occurred in some of the long-term care homes through COVID. What we didn't hear about were near as much were the care staff in some of the homes who actually remove themselves from their own family members to be able to stay in the home, to be able to safely provide care to the residents who were under their care. We don't hear about, the care aide who gets caught on camera, hidden camera, physically abusing a resident. We hear that gets taken up in the news, spreads like wildfire. We don't hear about the care aides who barely are making ends meet, who have residents who they're caring for, whose family have pretty much abandoned them, and that does occur in long-term care, not always, but it does. And these care aides use their own funds and go to Salvation Army and Value Village and buy clothes for these residents. That never makes the news. It infuriates me. I mean, and there are so many stories of that. There are also the other stories, but there are so many stories of care staff who truly care from their heart, who care from a place of love. And I've met them, and I've studied them, and I've worked with them, and I've been brought to tears by their compassion. And I've also seen care staff who shouldn't be care staff, and they're all in there. And unfortunately, the one side gets way more airtime than the other. And so my assumption is that the same is likely true around dementia and what we hear about. That's got to be one of the reasons why the Alzheimer's Society of Canada is focusing so much on having people who are living with dementia telling their own stories and fighting the stigma by those people who are inspiring and help us have a different lens of what it means to be diagnosed with this disease, of Alzheimer's disease specifically there, or any of the diseases that cause dementia.
So, someone who has had a diagnosis of dementia or one of the diseases that contribute to that, Alzheimer's, Lewy body syndrome, is it, or disease? They may be in the early stages and then on the dementia journey come to later stages as the disease progressive. What are some of the behavioral symptoms that can be dealt with through recreational therapy?
So one of the most important things that through my experience and also through my research, is ensuring that the individual still has a sense of meaning and purpose, and tailoring their day such that they still feel connected to something that gives them a sense of meaning. So, and in order to be able to do that, we have to honor and value their current strengths and their unique history. I think that also, like, that is so in line with battling the stigma, right? And it's actually kind of one and the same. If it's going to have, if you're going to enable and support the person with dementia to still have a sense of purpose and meaning, what you're having to do is tailor the day, the activities, the things that you're offering for them to do, the things that you are supporting for them to do. You're having it's not a one size fits all. So those non-pharmacological things are really about the individual and honoring who they are. That's that tenet of person-centered care. So we know, for instance, that when I did a study and I looked at what non-pharmacological interventions work to help decrease the behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia, we found that they needed to be tailored to the individual. So this means knowing the individual. And they also needed to be connected, help that person connect to a sense of purpose and meaning. So for an individual who a huge part of their history was that they were a mother, we know that baby doll therapy can help decrease some symptoms of dementia. This is for later stage. Dementia. But it doesn't work for everyone, because it wouldn't work for someone who didn't connect with that, who wasn't, do you know what I mean? So you can't say everyone should have baby doll therapy because it was successful with, in this, and also when you try to test that intervention, if you give it to everybody, it's not going to work. It's not going to be successful. But it's about really individualizing and tailoring that and helping to connect them to that sense of past and person. And so, for some individuals, folding laundry, helping to set the table, doing dishes, those types of things are actually some of the most important opportunities that we can encourage and enable and offer someone to do. And for others, it's like, are you kidding me? I don't want to do that. that has none. And instead they would be wanting to do something like engaging in art. But for other people, engaging in art and watercoloring may not meet their needs. So it's really about individualizing, tailoring, and helping them to have a sense of purpose and meaning. And always giving them a sense of choice, control, and empowerment in what you're doing. If that is taken away, there's no, like, the opportunities for success in those non-pharmacological interventions are decreased significantly. And you can offer a sense of and support a sense of choice, control, and empowerment in everything that you do. So if you're wanting, if you're encouraging like a painting activity, if you're visiting a loved one or a family member or a friend who has dementia, you can be like, okay, so maybe that person enjoyed painting, and you're saying, which color would you like to start with? That's choice. Giving them that opportunity. Even if they love apple juice, saying, I brought some juice, would you like apple juice or water? Offering that choice constantly, especially for someone who may now be living in a continuing care setting, choice and control get by default removed because they have to fit into a schedule often. The staffing is rarely high enough so that staff are able to offer all the choice and control that they would often like to, but they can't. We're getting a little bit better, not a little, we're getting much better about that. I mean, there used to be guidelines where everyone had to be up for breakfast by 8 a.m. Didn't matter if that was, if you were, if that was bad, in fact, for your health and well-being. So any opportunity to offer choice can really help to empower the person with dementia and to feel successful and to feel honored and having some autonomy. And you can build, as I say, you can build that in subtle ways. When you're offering choice, you want to make sure that you're not over inundating them. I don't know if you've ever gone into a restaurant and you look at a menu and it's like 5 pages long and you feel overwhelmed, right? It's like, I don't even know where to start. Like you want to have some choice, but not too much. And so that is especially the case for someone with dementia. So offering, and oftentimes the visual is really good. Would you like the green one or the orange one? Which one would you like? And actually having like the 2 glasses or whatever when you're offering choice.
So we're talking about dementia and helping those who are dealing with the challenges. We may think about a care setting, a long-term care setting, or an individual at home with his or her loved ones. Let's also look at the term a dementia-friendly community. How can the entire community contribute to someone with dementia living well, and in doing so removing the stigma around dementia within the wider population?
Such a big question, and I'm determined to be an ever optimist and believe that this could be a possibility. I'm going to quote this quote on what a dementia-friendly community is from the Alzheimer's Disease International organization. They say, a dementia-friendly community seek to empower all members of the community. So empower all members of the community to celebrate the capabilities of persons with dementia and view them as valuable and vital members of the towns, cities, and countries in which they reside. And if we think about that statement, that's such a stretch, I believe, from where we are right now. And how can we actually get there? And I think a big part of that is understanding and learning more. And there is that education component about what is dementia, what's actually happening in individuals' brains, so that we don't have unrealistic expectations of those individuals. And yet, the flip side of that is that there's a very fine line between not having unrealistic expectations of them and segregated them on safety and taking away and not seeing everything that they still have to offer, everything that they still can do, understanding their strengths and their opportunities to still contribute to our society, our communities, our life. And so I think that it's about education, but it's about also having contact with. Go and volunteer in long-term care homes. Go spend time with people who have dementia. Go spend time with people who work with people who have dementia, so that you can learn from them. Volunteer if you have a neighbor who has a spouse who has dementia, or a neighbor who has a parent who has dementia, offer to be a support and a volunteer respite person. Offer to spend some time with both of them together so that you can learn how to best support this person, and then have lunch with them, get to know them, or join the choirs that are sprouting up, all across Canada, quite frankly. Volunteer, I think I already said this, volunteer at a long-term care home or a continuum care setting. Get to know and work with people who have dementia, because until you have that experience, that personal experience, I don't think that just education alone or setting up, certainly policies and that help ensure that staff in banks, that staff in malls, that staff in any of the institutions where an individual needs to go to function have experience in working with an individual with dementia. That's a must. We don't do that well yet. I'm part of a study called Age-Friendly Communities Within Communities, and it's an international group, and we are going to different countries looking at age-friendly communities and cities. And we went to Norway, and we went to a mall that has said, we are age-friendly and we're also dementia-friendly. And in this mall, they actually trained all of the staff in all of the shops. And this was a big mall. This wasn't a little tiny mall. This was a big mall to understand and work with individuals with dementia. And then the people with dementia had a button, but they also had these cards that acted as money so that they could go and purchase things on their own. They were independent within these malls. There was understanding and everyone was looking out for them. And it was amazing. I was like, whoa, like what can be done? So there are examples of that. There other places around the world, actually, this is happening. We have some in Canada, we have some in the United States, there's many around in Europe, where they are actually cohabitating. They're building housing, or they already have housing that's been built, and older adults, some with, some without dementia, are cohabitating with university students, because these are two groups of individuals who often need some subsidized housing. And the university students get either a significantly reduced rate or they get rent-free, and how they pay their rent is by spending time with and assisting the older adults. And one of the things that we know from looking at the studies that have explored this is that the students really enjoy it. They benefit from it, they learn, and there's this real synergistic, beautiful coming together of meeting needs in unique ways. And I would say one of the best also outcomes of that is that these younger adults are also punching through the ageist belief system and the stigma of dementia and the stigma of aging, practically. And another positive potential outcome of this is that individuals who are in university who maybe have decided that they didn't want to work with people with older adults within their chosen field, having lived with older adults and had that experience, that may punch through that. I will tell you that as when I did my undergraduate degree way back in 1990 is when I graduated. As recreation therapists, we're trained to work with people with all different types of disabling conditions. And I knew I wanted to work with individuals with head, neck, and spinal cord injuries. The last group I wanted to work with was older adults in long-term care. It was like, no. And there was this almost stigma with that. That's like for the recreation therapists who couldn't quite cut it. And by default, life happened, and that's where I ended up, and I've never regretted it, and it's absolutely where my love and passion is. But I had to punch through my own beliefs around that. And then when I was working in the last facility that I worked in, as a recreation therapist, we had a brand new nurse. Well, she wasn't a brand new. We had a new nurse who transferred into our home, and I asked her, "How's it going?" And she said, "Well, it's way harder than I thought it was going to be." And she said when I left, because she left an acute care hospital, I think it might have even been Emerge, and her fellow RN said, "Oh, you're going to a long-term care home? What a waste of a great nurse." And there is that belief. And when I talk to occupational therapists and physiotherapists, there is this belief that if you choose to work with older adults, especially in long-term care, there's that ageism, that you can't cut it. That it's like the bottom of the totem pole within the hierarchy of all of the different applied health disciplines, and that's wrong. I mean, you want to be challenged. You be a physiotherapist in a long-term care home. You want to be challenged. Be a nurse who's trying to do what's called a med pass to 47 long-term care residents, many of whom don't recognize what pills are anymore, and the skill base that it takes. And the complexity. I mean, all of your patients have complex care needs, and they're not always. I mean, but we have this strange, depressing to me view of that. Instead of holding up the people who choose to and commit, dedicate their love and passion and education and training to caring for our seniors. We devalue them, and we've got to stop that. Have to, which is why anytime I present to individuals who work in long-term care, I thank them for choosing that field, and for committing and dedicating their careers to that field. I don't know. I don't think I answered your question.
Yes, indeed. And what I especially appreciated, and I'm sure our audience will appreciate as well, is that what you went into as to what individuals can do. Volunteer, knock on the door of your neighbor who has a family member with dementia. Sit with them, learn those sort of individual practical steps that we can take to be all part of the solution. That was great hearing that.
Oh, good, I answered it.
Yes. So those were the areas I wanted to touch on. Was there anything that we have not covered that you believe would be important for our viewers to focus on as we round up?
I would like to finish the loop on one of my aims in any intergenerational program that I run, or intergenerational programs that I've studied, is the hope that these youth, whether they are in grade 4 or in high school in linkages, or the university students who are cohabitating with older adults, that because they have had that experience, that contact, most often it's a positive experience. Of course, it's not always going to be positive, but that helps to break through that devaluing of selecting to work with older adults in your career. Because our population is aging, we have got to inspire, promote, and also enable, because it is a specialized skill. It is additional education and training. People who are eye doctors and working with people who have dementia and older adults, people who are dentists, are nurses, are all of these individuals who are coming up. What I'm hoping is that if we can get them in contact with and challenge those ageist thoughts, that they can actually shift into and say, this is my chosen work. This is where I want to work. Because if you're in healthcare, unless you're a pediatrician, you're likely going to be working with someone who is an older adult, and also potentially with people who have dementia. And then I also, just one last thing, I got asked this once, if there was one thing that you could do or would want to do as far as policy wise. Well, no, I don't want to ask. I won't add that.
We want to hear it.
Where would you focus your energy in trying to help people in having better healthy aging and in aging well? And this was a surprise. My answer surprised people because they know that I have a master's in gerontology and what my career focus has been on, and it's in youth. It's in ensuring that everyone has access to education, ensuring that everyone has access to healthy foods, ensuring that exercise is. I mean, when we cut out physical education in schools, we're putting our society at risk for not aging well. It actually is in investing there, because if you want to stave off dementia, you have to start doing that with lifestyle choices that happen when you are a child, and when it is most important is long before you are thinking about any possibility of developing dementia. We're talking 30s and 40s on, are you exercising? Are you managing sleep? How are you managing your stress? Are you ensuring that your heart is healthy? Because if your heart is healthy, your brain tends to be healthy too. So making sure that those two, and also just the social and cultural and spiritual aspects of individuals are healthy.
Those same principles in youth even apply to those who are in their 50s. Golden Voices is, our audience is from 55 and up, but we do include those in their 50s. So that emphasis needs to be there as well, because in youth, wonderful, because they would have the longest stretch of time to ensure those efforts stave off the onset of dementia. But even from the 50s, you would say that we can do all that we can to ensure that we have a healthy brain for the longest time possible.
Absolutely. And we know that starting any exercise program and including resistance training, so actually, getting into the gym a bit, all of that, working on our sleep, health, our diet, all of that, it's never too late to start. We know that too, unequivocally from all the research. It's never too late to start. Looking at all of those things, also how you're managing your stress, mindfulness, meditation, excellent practices as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Sienna. And thank you for all of the tips that you've shared with us and insights as to how we as individuals can all play a part in having that contact with those who are dealing with dementia. And what I took away very powerfully from that, from what you've said, is the benefit is, it's not for their benefit alone, but we will have our lives so greatly enriched by that contact.
Yes, I'm so glad you heard that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
It was wonderful spending this time with you and learning so much from you. I have been speaking with Dr. Sienna Caspar, who has spent her life, her career focused on seniors, especially in long-term care settings. Dr. Caspar is an associate professor in the University of Lethbridge, and it's been our pleasure to speak about dementia and how we all as individuals can be part of the solution, making it a dementia-friendly world. Thank you very much, and see you next time on the Golden Years Fireside Chat series. Thank you.